Hello dear students, so this video is targeting my LOTE students specifically. It may be that one day some literacy students will also be given the link to this to the series of these lectures, but nevertheless this is just for the LOTE students. Now I would like after we have covered actually some things in the last module, so I'll just try to make them visible on the screen. So we looked at the capabilities, priorities, and we were actually looking at how much is involved in activities which at the first sight seem like very simple. I'm reading, some of the things I do as a LOTE person, as a person who uses a particular language other than English. Well, I might read books, or I might read books to other people. Then we actually, when we were analyzing the activity of reading a book in relation to the curriculum, then we found out that a lot of things were actually relevant that normally would bypass our attention, right? So when we actually look at the capabilities and we also look at the priorities, which is the indigenous link, community link, and Asia link, we just couldn't believe that what seemed like, oh, I do read books in a language that I teach either for myself or I read them to my family, my children. All of a sudden, we had to consider the demographics, and we had to ourselves grow awareness of what is the demography and cultures within the area, which we sort of so simply call Japan or call Germany or call Italy. No country is just one people, one dialect, one culture, right? So we've covered that before, so I don't want to actually go on about it. But the purpose of those of that meeting which we had was for us to start developing a critical framework for analyzing our own LOTE practices. So whether we use this framework to reflect on what resources we will use in order to create a unit of work or to create an environment for students to engage in LOTE, or whether we use this framework for analyzing our own LOTE activities. Either way, the framework asks us particular questions, and when it does it, then we actually, when attempting to answer these questions, we found out how much is relevant. And this is what these meetings are about, or these lectures with me. These lectures with me are not about, oh, well, Ania, I do this or I do that. This is about using the curriculum and its three-layer structure, which means cross-curriculum priorities, capabilities, and then particular outcomes for a particular LOTE and year to actually reflect on what is it that we know, knowing a language other than English actually involves. So we've done that. So we've done all of that, we learned about the cultures, different types of books, maybe different dialects and all of that. So that's very lovely. And maybe using all of that to actually connect maybe with people in Japan, if we teach Japan. So if we use, so part of our activities would be to, when it comes to engaging with Asia, as a priority would be to actually do this to engage with people of Asia, maybe even have websites that actually do something. If you think of your own activities, maybe you actually run a web page on Facebook, or, whereby you actually bring people in Australia in some way of to connect to people in Japan or wherever. So all of that is cool. The question which I would like to actually raise today is not so much now about the range of texts that we would like to use, because that we have covered, but and the kinds of symbols, right, and the themes and all of that. What I would like us to do today is to actually think about the concept of text itself. So whether you watch this particular lecture today from the perspective of your assignment that asks you to create a learning resource for students or unit of work, whatever we may call it, or whether you look at it from the perspective of critically discussing your LOTE practices, one thing I would like you to think about is actually what is text and what does this mean to you as a teacher of LOTE. This is a very important actually focus. This is because typically the idea of text in LOTE has been highly underestimated. This is because of the tradition or of the particular approaches in language teaching that have governed and actually have um, ha, uh, uh, prevented progress in LOTE pedagogy. So basically text used to be thought of as words organized by grammar, and consequently what students were exposed to were some texts that people wrote and all of that, and then they were asked to memorize them in one way or another and reproduce them. We know the drill, right? So whether it was behaviorism or maybe even what they called communicative language teaching, either way, it was all about producing text, produce some text. Right. What I want to say is today is to draw your attention to the fact that producing text is not a very simple thing. You can't just produce a letter to a vice president of or to a president of Poland. You can't just produce a letter to your colleague or to your lover. And actually, I'll show you something which is quite interesting now. This is actually a little text produced obviously in English by a Romanian girl who studies, who is actually native in English or sort of native in English. She's lived here for a few years in Australia. And she was given a task to produce a speech or a news report or some sort of summary, I don't know, whatever it is, about on the topic of her interest. So she chose Pompeii. But what's very interesting is how the text look when she produced it using Wikipedia. Obviously, this is all plagiarized, right, from a website here and there. So, so something happened on the 24th of August, and then the thing erupted. Then this actually wasn't there, so I will remove it. So that's what it looked like. So it erupted. One person survived, but so what? Notice that the girl writes this person survived, and there's not even a mention of this person once again in the text. So there. Then we have people were plastered by the volcanic ash. And then what else? Something happened. Lots of people go to Pompeii, and Pompeii was really good, and today it is a museum. Yep, riveting, right? Riveting or boring. What do you think? What do you think does this text read like? How does it read like? To me, it reads boring. Obviously, it's a plagiarization of Wikipedia or something to this effect because she's got all this amazing detail. But really, imagine a 13-year-old who is listening to her talking, and she says on the 24th of August, and the kid is rolling his or her eyes, trying to find out what 24th of August means, and it's getting really kind of dense. So the Mount Vesuvius, I mean, barely anyone can pronounce it, erupted. Then it erupted with a deadly cloud. Kids have no idea what it is, and this goes on. Then there's this detail, and so on. The point I'm trying to make is the text is not the text, right? And I would like to take you now through a series of exercises basically based on my own research, for which University of Charles Darwin University paid a lot of money. So I thought I might as well integrate in my teaching what the university paid for, so that you actually learn um, to look at text a little bit differently. Now, the way I will talk to you about text today is not necessarily the only way to talk about the text, but I hope that it will actually bring some dimensions into your thinking about the text, that it will help you to work with your students in future, and at the same time it will help you reflect on your own understanding what happens in a LOTE text, and maybe as a LOTE user from now on you yourself will change, and you yourself will become a more conscious critical user of um, text. So we might begin with something which is a little bit an introduction. Right. So what we will be, you can read up for yourself all this text, but what I wanted to show you here is this little video. Now, because the way my headphones are constructed, you actually can't hear the music as this guy is singing. This is X Factor America, and this guy is this Alejandro. He's singing Julio Iglesias' song, Would You Dance If I Something, Would You, I don't know, I can't remember, just tell you soon. Would you dance if I asked you to dance? Would you cry if would you run and never look back or something? Right, look at the reaction. Okay, look at the reaction of the audience as he's singing. Look at them. They like him, right? They like him. But now look what happens. Now he's breaking into Spanish. And look at that, what happens. The whole room erupts, right? The whole room erupts. Look at that. I'm going to turn it off. Look at them. Now, the question really is, which I wanted to show you, is, I mean, you might be looking at, you think you might be looking at the show, at a song, but everything we do is a text. I'm just going to explain it. There was a very famous linguist or semiotician, actually, a person who is into philosophy of meaning. His name was Jacques Derrida, a French bloke, and he basically put up a proposition and defended it, and I don't think anyone else has actually managed to say he was wrong. But everything in life is a text. Everything. We are storytellers. So a show is not just a show. What this man does, he creates a text, and then people either buy it or not, right? So there's a particular song he chooses to sing, his dress, his way of interpreting the song, and so on. All of this creates a text. It's very good, but this guy didn't just produce a text by choosing a music, didn't just produce a text through his experience, he also produced a text by switching two languages, English and using English and Spanish. The question is, why did he do it? And the other question, actually maybe even more important, is, did you notice that he succeeded? Whatever he wanted to do, he succeeded, because did you notice that the audience actually loved it? So why is it that the audience loved it? So to cut the long story short, and you can actually think it to yourself about it, about these questions, but basically the guy is in America, right? He sings a Spanish guy's song, which is okay, but he knows that his audience is what? Bilingual or multilingual, really. I mean, in that audience, you will have the English speakers and Spanish speakers and so on. You also have to view this whole show that he's actually creating through the perspective of the dispositions or beliefs that people had about Spanish people or Latino people in America. You might be aware that until today, a lot of people think very little about the Latino people, right? So they are actually, they had been segregated, they have been actually put down and so on. And what does this boy do? A boy to me, because I'm in my 50s, but really, what does this young man do? What he does is saying, look, guys, I am a global guy, right? I'm just not a Spanish or whatever, right? I'm a global guy. I am multilingual. Oh my God. Isn't he tapping into the spirit of the 21st century? We are no longer sitting parochially in our little village. What we're doing is actually learning to have an internationalized global head. And this is the point that I want to make, and make it every time I teach LOTE, which is, we're not teaching English, pardon me, we're not teaching languages and English as well to speakers of other languages. So we're not teaching languages in order for other people to just prattle out words. We're actually creating citizens of the world. And languages are important because they allow people to grow greater understandings of how to be in different parts of the world and how to be with people from different parts of the world. So this is it. This guy is saying, I'm global. I'm aware of not only that the song is sung by a Spanish guy, but I'm also aware that, I am on the international stage. Here, the whole world is watching me. And by singing Spanish and English, I'm saying we're all brothers. We're all together, right? We're all one. We're all one. There's no segregation. And this actually comes across very well, not only to because it taps into or resonates with the feelings of the people who are from Spanish background, but it also resonates with the Chinese, it resonates with the Polish people and so on. Because if I were sitting in that audience, I would think to myself, great, great. The more we actually recognize the diversity that we're living, right, the more I am legitimized as a person of another language, and that feels great. So what I wanted to say through this little example, that speaking another language or having an awareness of diversity when appropriated in specific context is actually powerful. It's actually powerful, and I'm sure, so this is under language awareness on this slide, this point. So the point is learning a LOTE or learning any other language is not only about learning a language, it is also about acquiring a tool for resonating with other people. And while it might seem like an obvious thing, of course, Ania, it is about resonating with other people. This video with Alejandro shows very clearly how much or how well people actually resonate with those who speak their language or simply another language. This ability to create relationships, positive relationships with the people we meet by using another language or by showing that we have another language, I want to leave with you in your heads for the time when you will need to think about how relevant it is, this point, for your assignment. So we might actually discuss the practical context in which this kind of capacity will be actually helpful to you in your assignments. But you can clearly already see that if you want to actually think of your capacity as of your practices, of your LOTE practices for when you discuss your own LOTE practices, you could illustrate contexts where, in fact, knowing a LOTE was a bonding material between you and other people. And in terms of how we help our students to learn a language through a unit by designing a unit of work or by designing a learning resource, we could actually reflect a little bit about the greater context in which this particular learning resource or unit of work would be useful, so that actually students, by engaging in those learning experiences, they can actually not just prattle in another language, but in fact create constructive and bonding relationships with people. And this comes back again to the curriculum. Okay, so with this little example, I just want to close this aspect of the text that pretty much everything is the text, or maybe everything is a text, because whatever we know it through text, through concepts. So to follow up on Jacques Derrida, everything is a text, and therefore text serve particular social function. And people like another sociologist would say, Craig Calhoun would say, we always play to win, right? We always act in order to reason to, for our action to actually have a desired impact on our interlocutors or our audience. In that sense, what happens is we want to bond with people. We want to have positive relationships with people, and sometimes using a LOTE will actually assist us in it, because we are not living in a monolithic society. We're actually living in a diverse society. I will cut this video into a few parts so that we don't have long videos. In the next video, I want to show you now how we could actually assist our students in thinking about text, construct text, and also analyze text. So I'll just finish this one, and please move to part 2.